This News in the Nation is News in the Nation number 15, and it is about a man named Hernando de Soto. And you can see from our title, De Soto discovers the Mississippi River. So he is the one that is credited the first European to see the Mississippi River. Obviously, there were Native Americans, indigenous people here hundreds and thousands of years before De Soto, so they were actually the ones that discovered the Mississippi River. The events in this article take place from 1539 to the year 1542. First of all, let's take a look at our questions so we know what we're listening for as we're reading or listening to this article. So 1, 2, and 3, of course, are true and false. Number 1, because of his kindness to them, the Indians gave De Soto and his men food and work for them as well. So we'll have to see if De Soto was kind to the Native Americans and then whether or not the Native Americans responded by giving them food and working for him. Number 2, Hernando de Soto was a great Portuguese explorer. So we'll have to find out whether that's true or false, whether he was from Portugal or whether he was sailing for another country. Number 3, when De Soto came to North America, he brought 600 men with him to help him in his search. We'll have to see how big of a group he brought with him. Then 4, 5, and 6, of course, multiple choice. Number 4, De Soto came to North America in search of A, gold, B, spices, or C, land to settle. Number 5, De Soto is given credit for discovering or being the first European to see A, the St. Lawrence River, B, the Mississippi River, or C, the Hudson River. Number 6, in order to explore the land, De Soto and his men had to A, cut paths through the forest, B, build boats to cross rivers, or C, both of those things, both A and B. And then we have our vocabulary definitions that we have to match our vocabulary words up with. Number 7, the Indians living in North America when De Soto arrived. We'll have to just figure out what that word is. Number 8, we have the meaning. We have to figure out the word that goes along with a river of the central United States, discovered or seen by De Soto. Number 9, land belonging to a country because it discovered or claimed it first. We have to figure out what that is. And number 10, to give honor, to give someone honor for something he or she has done. So we want to make sure we find those definitions, and we'll read those vocabulary words and the definitions as well. So you can see up here we have the word natives, and natives are the Indians or the indigenous people living in North and South America when De Soto arrived. A claim is land belonging to a country because it discovered it first. Well, the Native Americans discovered it first. They had the claim, but in this case, the claim would be the European countries discovering it first. And then credit is to give someone honor for something they have done, he or she has done. And the Mississippi River is a river of the central United States discovered by De Soto. And you can see here De Soto discovers or is the first European to see the Mississippi River. So I will read the article for you. Hernando de Soto came to North America to search for gold. In 1539, he landed in Florida. He brought 600 men with him. They made a great show as they set off with gleaming swords and prancing horses. For 3 years, De Soto and his group wandered about. They crossed much of what is now the southeastern United States. There were no roads. They had to cut paths through the forest. When they came to streams, they had to build boats. De Soto forced the natives to give his men food and to work for him. So they were forced to work for De Soto and forced to give him food. As a result, they hated him. De Soto reached the great Mississippi River. While he was near the river, he became sick and died. His men did not want the natives to know their leader had died, so they dropped his body into the river. So he's actually buried in the Mississippi River. De Soto found no gold, but his search spread Spanish claims and increased the knowledge of the new land. He is credited with being the discoverer, or the first European, to see the Mississippi River. If you take a look at the back of your News of the Nation, you can see the nice coloring job I did with crayon here. Hopefully I stayed in the lines, but This line right here is the route that DeSoto took. So he landed in what is now called Tampa Bay. He traveled throughout what is now the state of Florida, Georgia, into Alabama, into Mississippi, and crosses the Mississippi River. Of course, he was the first European, or one of the first Europeans, to see the Mississippi River. Goes through Arkansas, comes back down here around Louisiana, and in Louisiana, that's where he gets sick, and he is buried in the Mississippi River. His men basically did not want the Native Americans to find out that he died, and I'll explain that if you have not watched the slideshow yet. He basically had the natives convinced that he was a god, and gods are not supposed to die, so his men did not want the natives to know that he was a human and that he died, so they hid his body by burying it in the Mississippi River. In this part here, it talks a little bit about the biography of Hernando de Soto, so I'm going to read this real quick. I also talk about this in this slideshow, the video that you watched. And de Soto lived from about 1524, they're not sure the exact year because they didn't have great records back then, and died in 1541. De Soto was born in the Extremadura region of Spain. He sailed to Panama while he was in his teens. De Soto took part in explorations in Central America and helped lead the conquest of Nicaragua, which began in 1524, and that's in Central America, Central Mexico. He later was a well-known resident of Nicaragua after it became a Spanish colony. From 1531 to 1536, De Soto served as a leader in the conquest of the Inca. This expedition was headed by Francisco Pizarro, another Spanish explorer. De Soto was the first Spaniard, or first Spanish person, to meet Atahualpa, the last Inca emperor, and later opposed the execution of the Indian leader. So he helped Francisco Pizarro to conquer or to take over the Incan Empire that we learned about way back in September. And he was one of the people that convinced the Spanish not to kill or not to execute Atahualpa, the Indian leader. In 1534, De Soto was appointed lieutenant governor of Cusco, which was the Inca capital. He became rich from treasures collected during the Inca conquest, but desired even greater wealth and power. De Soto returned to Spain in 1536, seeking a governorship in the New World and the leadership of a new expedition. In 1537, De Soto was appointed governor of Cuba. The king also gave De Soto the right to explore and conquer a region of North America that included many present-day southern states. De Soto hoped to find gold there so he could become more rich. So he was a conqueror. And of course, the southern states were the route that I showed you just a few minutes ago on the back page. De Soto landed near Tampa Bay, off the coast of Florida, in May 1539. His expedition included about 600 soldiers and more than 100 servants. The group headed north and reached El Apalcha, which was an Indian area that is now in northeastern Florida. A band of explorers sent by De Soto from El Pacha reached Pensacola Bay in western Florida. The expedition continued north to the Savannah River in Georgia and followed the river to the Blue Ridge Mountains. After crossing the mountains, the explorers followed the Alabama River south to present-day Mobile, Alabama. They defeated Indians in a battle there, but they suffered heavy losses. De Soto continued his unsuccessful search for gold, so he never found gold. He never made it rich in North America, through what became known as the state of Mississippi. He first sighted the Mississippi River in May 1541. De Soto crossed the river into what is now Arkansas and explored to the west and the south. He then returned to the Mississippi, where he died of fever. De Soto's men weighted his body and buried it in the river. So once again, he's buried in the Mississippi River. De Soto is known as a courageous and great explorer. However, his primary goals were riches and power. He was a conquistador, for which he and his followers killed and tortured many Native Americans. So even though in Spain he's considered courageous and a great explorer, to the Native Americans, a different perspective, he was mean, he was cruel. He took their land, he killed them, he tortured them. He is not worshipped or not admired among the Native Americans because he was a conquistador who conquered them. Now, speaking of Native Americans, some Native Americans that lived in this area during this time period, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong and I apologize, I believe it's Timucua Indians. So portraits of these Native Americans of Florida appeared in a book published in Europe shortly after De Soto's death in 1541. They were hunters and fishers who lived in towns surrounded by stockades, and a stockade is a wall made from basically sharpened wooden poles that they put around a village to protect it. The religious ceremonies included human sacrifice. So just like the Aztecs, just like the Mayas, they did sacrifice humans. Both men and women were sometimes tattooed on their faces and bodies. The men depicted above was described as a Florida chief. The Timucua became extinct, so there's no more of them, sometime before 1800, following invasions by Creek Indians and English settlers. So because of other Native American groups, but probably more because the English settlers, they became extinct, meaning that there are no other descendants of the Timucua. And there's another little article here. Deer hunters from the Timucuan tribe in Florida. This illustration right here, based on a drawing by Jacques Lemoyne, one of the group of Frenchmen who tried to found a colony or tried to start a colony in Florida and failed. In his view, he recorded Indians' practice of disguising themselves in deer skins in order to get close to the living deer. These are the tribes that the De Soto encountered on his trek to the Mississippi River. So they actually wear deer skins to disguise or camouflage themselves so the deer do not run away. We saw that earlier this year in one of our videos where the Native Americans were dressed up in buffalo skins so they were able to creep closer to the buffalo. And in our last story, Glory, God, and Gold. In 1539, Hernando de Soto, an associate or a crew member of Pizarro's group in Peru, organized a well-armed expedition of 600 Spaniards, or Spanish people, and landed on the east coast of Florida, searching for the mythical 7 cities of gold, just like Coronado, he was searching for gold, that were supposed to, according to Indian legend, lie somewhere in the interior, to lie somewhere in what is now the United States. For 4 years, De Soto and his men fought Native Americans and fever, searching through the future Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina. They crossed the Appalachian Mountains into Tennessee and traveled through Alabama, then crossed the Mississippi River and marched to Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. De Soto died of fever along the way in 1542, and the survivors of his expedition ultimately reached Mexico in 1543 after terrible hardships. So they had a lot of obstacles in their way. Of the original 600 people, only 311 arrived in Mexico. De Soto had set out to find gold and glory. Instead, he explored much of what is now America, and discovered the Mississippi River. The Catholic fathers, or the Catholic priests or ministers who followed De Soto, worked to build missions and to convert the Native Americans to Christianity. So that is our article about Hernando de Soto, who explored, I'm going to flip this over again, who explored much of the Southwest, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana. I said Southwest, I meant Southeast, sorry about that. So he explored what are now those states, and even though he did not find gold, he was one of the first Europeans to see the Mississippi River. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.